I think we're ready to go, everyone. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today at NAC at Home. This is a special program. Not only do we have wonderful guests, but it's our first program we've done internationally. So I'm very excited to have two special friends, Jimmie Durham and Michela Bondato, join us from Italy. My name is Ben Hartley, and I'm the Executive Director of the National Arts Club. Right now we have over 100 people joining us, and I know many more will be joining us throughout the talk. If you don't know the National Arts Club, we are a 501c3. We're a nonprofit in New York City on leafy Gramercy Park when we're open to the public. We have over 150 events a year, all of them free. Over 40,000 people come and enjoy the programs. Right now we're doing all of our programming online. So visit our website at nationalartsclub.org or visit us on YouTube where we replay all of our programs. We're doing things 2, 3, and 4, and 5 times a week. So there's lots to see and do. Today, I'm very, very happy to introduce Jimmie Durham. Jimmie is an artist, poet, activist, and essayist. He's currently living the life I want, which is he's in Naples, Italy. And when he's not in Naples, he spends time in Berlin. He'll be joined by my good friend, Michela Bondato. Michela spends her time between Europe and the US. She has been a cultural advisor to governments, to corporations and nonprofits for, well, many years. We worked together at the Guggenheim, and Michela is joining us today from Venice. So Michela and Jimmie, thank you for being with us today. A real pleasure, and over to you. Ciao.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ben. Yes, I am in Venice at the moment. And thank you, Jimmie, for joining this conversation.
I'm happy to
Really a pleasure, Jimmie, being with you. I think that the secret of this difficult time is friendship and intimacy. I think that being friends and sharing doubts, wishes, dreams in these moments is particularly important. And I've been so lucky that in the last couple of months, when it is not possible to be together because Jimmie is in Naples at the moment, and I am in Venice at the moment, we have been in Berlin together, where Jimmie spends 6 months a year, more or less, for what I know now. So I think that we had very interesting conversations, and I was very lucky to share ideas with Jimmie about culture, about life, about art, and contemporary art. And I know, and I would like to ask Jimmie, in these days where culture would be our star to guide our journey in the dark of new way of lives that I don't know, I have no idea. So what do you think that culture, how we can describe culture, Jimmie, in your opinion, now more than ever? What can be the meaning and the how it can become a tool to understand our reality?
I always think of culture as something that's made up, and who knows what we're talking about. But when you say how it might help us understand how to live, I think culture is how we live. So it ought to be what happens in the morning. There ought to be a poem that you hear or that you read in the morning as a good way to start the day. There ought to be some gardening that you do in the morning to start the day. There ought to be a friend that you talk to. There ought to be some artwork that you not look at, but that you try to experience in the morning to start your day. And then the day will start.
And then every day is different. If I can tell you, friends, a secret that in our last conversation, Jimmie told me when I was asking him about what we can do nowadays to find a meaning in these strange places. And I think that we all live in strange places and strange times. Jimmie told me, Michaela, keep working. Isn't it true, Jimmie?
It's certainly true, yeah.
And I found it refreshing and a way to get out of worries and enter into a place where there are possibilities, where we can find a meaning in what we hope. So, Jimmie, shall we share some of your works and you can tell us what they are about?
Nice idea, thank you.
Good. So let's start with the first one. Here we are. So, Jimmie, what are we talking about here?
This is an old work that I made in my first show in Europe for a long time. This was in the 92 Documenta. And I had several works in that Documenta, and this is only one. And it's in the little river called the Little Fulda. And it's a PVC construction. It's maybe 4 meters high. It's a very heavy piece of stuff. And it's got an iron bottom to it, so it's not really just floating there. I wanted to do public sculpture that didn't look like public sculpture, that didn't look monumental, and that didn't necessarily look like what we think art should look like. There are so many signs of art, I wanted to get away from them. So this was the first of a bunch of things I did with different kinds of hollow pipes. I like the idea of the passageway.
So, Jimmie, when you talk about being to keep a distance between your art and public art, why do you want it?
There are always more than one answer to a question.
Yes.
I don't like the idea of public art in the first place, because the public doesn't choose it. The public has to experience it every day if it's in their way, if it's on your way to work or in front of where you work or something. And there is no way to consult the public. You can consult a few people, and who knows, you might get a different answer every day. But to impose art on people always seems anti-art to me, against art. I think it ought to be each person is voluntary. Oh, there's a new image.
Voila. What about this one?
This is many years later, also in Europe, but this is in the part of France called Strasbourg, where they still speak German half the time. It's a steel pipe that's welded together and painted very nice orange. And I'm still experimenting with anti-monumentality. And I wanted to make some little, not exactly a joke, not exactly humor, but not exactly seriousness either. To make something that was kind of like people wouldn't be sure exactly what it was they were looking at. And they would not probably think that it's some art. There is no heroism. There is no phallic symbol here, you might say.
Jimmie, as we know now, these days, at least before the coronavirus, big monumentality, big art, the biggest, the better, was part of the game in contemporary art. So do you think that doesn't mean so much to be big?
I think it is against art, because it is about the impressiveness of largeness, which is kind of a silly way to impress somebody. You can always impress a mouse by how big you are, but it doesn't mean anything.
Mm. So what about these these works? Same place, different place?
This orange piece in Strasbourg, it is quite big because it goes a long ways across the grass there, but it's only long, it's not very big. And it's public in a park. And I have some public pieces, I guess, that are not in parks, but I'm not sure that I do. Yeah, I have a couple now, I remember. Never mind. But the piece on the left is in Australia. And I think it is gone by now, but it was for a Sydney Biennale, the one that my Portuguese friend did, Isabel Carlos. And it's also PVC, but it's red PVC. I should stop and say how much I have loved PVC for so many years. Now I see it is politically incorrect, but it is petroleum and seawater. That's what it is. And I'm just charmed by the idea. And this is like a smaller version of what I did in Documenta. It's a serpent, and I like the idea of color, what color does. I love red. I've always said most art should be red. Most ladies' dresses should be yellow.
Should be?
Yellow.
Red? Yellow? Ah.
Yeah.
So what about nature? I see that your art in these first images is in nature. What is your relationship with nature?
More than I wish it to be, because you don't escape nature. When you die, I suppose you escape nature, but we live in nature, and nature is inside us. I have many physical problems. This is nature.
Yeah.
This is nature living not just inside me, but inside out. I am not separated from nature. And I'm happy about that most of the time. I don't like viruses very much.
Well,
some bacteria are good, some are bad. Some fruit is good, some is bad. That's life.
Yes, that's life. So do you think that in your vision of art and life, Jimmie, your Indian tradition as a part of it?
It is a part of it because you are who you are. You can't escape who you are. I've tried all my life to escape everything because I never like to be at home. I always like to be a stranger. But you can't be a stranger to the world because you're in it. You are, let's say, Marcel Duchamp never stopped being French. You cannot escape who you are. As soon as you start trying to make profit from who you are, or to I don't know, to defend something, or to use something, then you lose it, I think. But you cannot escape it at the same time.
Yeah.
So this is in another part of France. This is in Nantes. And it is a big, long red PVC that goes into the river there. And then it comes up onto the land as though it's a big serpent, a big red serpent. Yeah, that's it. And you can see this piece if you go to Nantes. You can take a boat trip on the river, and up and down this river there is all sorts of artworks. And you can take an art boat to see these artworks. It's really a beautiful trip.
The idea of a snake is something that is present in your art, Jimmie?
It always is, because it is one of those symbols that are always there. I think for humanity, it is always there. When you look at the symbol for medical doctors, for medicine, it's always a snake or two snakes. And every religion has stuff about serpents. And it is such a fluid thing. It is a serpent and a dragon and a snake are very helpful and very dangerous at the same time. Very wise and very destructive. You never know what's going to happen.
Yeah. Well, black and white, yin and yang. this
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, double face of the coin. So what about this red car? We know that you like red, and here we are with the red car.
This was in Sydney Biennale before the other one, but this was I don't remember the year, but a long time ago. But it's a great big stone in front of the Opera House in Sydney, and everyone was watching, and everyone thought that I would drop the stone on the car. But of course, if you drop a stone, you can't control what happens. And under this place is a giant car park. Under the whole Opera House is a giant car park. So I didn't want my car in stone to go down into the next level. So I put it down very easily. And then I painted the face on the stone because I could see that it had a face there. And once again, I'm also playing with the idea of monumentality. This is a stone monument on a pedestal, and the pedestal is red. A similar idea, I forgot that this piece was there. This is in Berlin, except the piece is now at the National Museum in Canada. There is a little old Russian airport. Just behind those trees is Poland. But it is still Berlin. It's the outskirts of Berlin. And this is an old Russian airport. And this airplane was there. And they were going to sell it, whoever owned it, I forget who, to some African country. It was still a working airplane. So I got it fairly cheap. And then I got the stone even cheaper. And once again, I had to place it there very carefully
Yes. Well, I see the kind of attention there. So here we are in more recent years.
Now we have left art altogether.
Yeah, we jumped from
We
the
jumped
nature.
apart. Yeah.
We are in the design somehow
Yeah.
area.
Two or
So
3 years ago, Maria Teresa and I started a design company called Labinac, and you can see it on labinac.com. And we make furniture, we make glassware, we make lighting, all sorts of things. And this is a bench. And I had just thought, isn't there a different way to do a bench instead of 4 legs? What if you had a lot of legs? And what if they didn't all go to the floor? So I just made this experimenting. And it was one of the first pieces that we sold. I was so happy.
I know. You know, perception is also an interesting word. And to me, this image is about music. The image, your bench is about music.
I've always felt the same, that it was musical.
So why design, Jimmie? Why did you decide to experience this new thing?
It's not new for Maria Teresa and I. We always have done, but we just did it for ourselves. And I grew up in a family that had to make everything, and everyone in my family made things. My father made most of our furniture. By the time I was 12, I was making tables, this, that, and the other. And it's something that it stays with me. And just 2 years ago, when we started the company, I saw you could make things for sale that are not art, but that are extremely well made as I can make them, and still have meaning, so that they're not just something that you don't look at, but something that you might be pleased to look at, to experience, and pleased to put your coffee cup on, or your wine glass, or to sit on, or to read by. So that's the way I think of design, as a way to live life also.
When you talk about well done, which is an interesting concept, both in art and in design. Interesting because sometimes artists don't think that to create to do it well is a plus, not necessary. Do you think it is important both in art and in design?
I think maybe in art more in a certain way, because we know it is a necessity in design, or we should know that. But in art, everyone has kind of been taught to do it and have it done. But I have known in my life many artists who did all sorts of interesting things, and 20 years later, it's gone away. If it's made of plastic and the plastic deteriorates, so that, like, this is a thing that I know about. Olivetti typewriter cover, it's now only 50 years old, but it deteriorated in the museum, and it cannot be replaced because there is not another one, and you can't remake it. And I don't think life goes on forever. I don't think art should go on forever. But You make art for people, and you have to respect when you do things for people. You have to respect other people. If you make something that will go away in a short number of years, it's not honest. You're being dishonest. And it's a kind of cheat that is not funny. It's a kind of dishonesty that is not interesting.
So you think that honesty is an essential part of art?
An essential part, yeah. And I think it's not about truth. I don't think we should consider truth one way or another. But I think we should always train ourselves to recognize a lie. If something is a lie, if something is dishonest, we should train ourselves to recognize that and reject it, it seems to me.
How you can do it?
I try all the time just by looking, by experiencing.
You know, do you think that the intention makes the difference?
I'm not sure now.
No?
Because there are so many young artists that have been trained by other young artists. I'm an old guy, I can say that.
Even?
3 or 4 generations of young artists now.
Yeah.
And I think they're maybe, in a way, they're trained that ideas like honesty of the making the work, honesty of work, is kind of old-fashioned or sentimental or something. And it certainly is not.
So I was, well, if we can go back to the armchair, Nadine, the image before the other one, yes. So, Jimmie, tell us about your bone there.
I had in my studio in Berlin many of these bones, horse bones and cow bones, and I saw that some of them looked like old chair legs. And the reason is obvious. What we do always imitates what we know from nature. It's just a part of our nature, whether we are conscious of it or not. We make things that are like the world out there. But then I said, I could find an old chair with a similar legs and replace one. So I went out in Berlin to a used furniture store, and there were 2 of these chairs out in front. I bought them quite cheaply, redid them, took the legs off, one leg off of each, and put a bone in its place. And it's perfectly sturdy. And for me, there are many layers to it. I reuse a part of this animal. I bring it back into things. And I reuse this chair, which was probably never going to be used. And then we all get a chance to see more things than we would have seen before, if that makes sense.
And what about the flower?
The flower, I've been in Venice over years many times, and I go to Murano quite often, and I go through old discarded glass, and I find all these beautiful glass parts that are kind of pearlescent glass, milky pearlescent, usually from the 20s and 30s, parts of old chandeliers, parts of old lighting. And I say, they also are too beautiful to be thrown away. And I don't like most chandeliers. I don't like the decorativeness of chandeliers, of most lighting. So I said, if I mix this glass with just industrial iron, so this is hangs on the wall, and the iron is just different kinds of construction angle iron that I've cleaned up a bit, put a little lead light in the back. And I think the iron and the glass complement each other in a way that I like very much.
So, do you miss Venice?
I miss Venice. Venice is the most special place in the world, isn't it?
Well, it's in these days, Venice is, as you can imagine, very empty. And well, and considering that tourism is so important in Venice, well, you can imagine how it is difficult here for people because there are no jobs.
It seems strangely difficult.
Yeah.
But we do hope that in the future, things will calm down a little bit and there won't be such an overflow of tourists where everything becomes garbage.
Yeah, yes, Jimmy, as we know, probably this idea of having less tourism in Venice is somehow really a good thing in a way, because tourism is also
It's good for other
destroying.
people who become tourists, because so many people who do a tour of something, they are cheated so much.
Yeah.
Because they see so little, they have so little time, and they're being cheated, let's say.
Yeah, I
The
think
fact
so.
that they're tourists at that moment, before that, after that, they're just normal human beings.
Yeah. So maybe somehow this is something that will improve our perception of reality wherever we go, because it is not only Venice, of course, it is everywhere.
Wouldn't that be nice, Michaela?
I think so. I think that a little more of you don't like truth, but honesty. So let's talk about honesty. would be very nice. So tell me about this wonderful little table that you know you know that I love it. You know it.
I remember that.
Yeah.
For 4 years, I had a studio in Berlin that was in the Grunewald in the forest, just at the edge of Berlin. And I would go out and find pieces of wood that were just fallen trees and fallen things. And I found this piece of tree already like that, and I said, you could make that into bronze. And then what? Oh, you could put a top on it. So one thing led to another, and it has been quite popular, so that now in Venice there is a newly opened garden called the Jardin Reale, just in San Marco, and they have different tables of these. They have this and I think 6 or 7 more of different sizes and different pieces of wood turned into bronze. But I just love this idea that I can find things and reuse them so that they're not exactly, I hope it doesn't look rustic. That's what I'm trying to say. I take away the rustic look and keep the grace of the piece of wood.
Why rusty doesn't work for you?
It always becomes too sentimental too quickly and too tiring because it's a small message.
So what about the lamp? I know there is an interesting story about this lamp.
I had the idea to make a bunch of lamps for a museum, and they would sell them. But I wanted broken glass because I love broken glass. And I had 8 big sheets of gray glass, very thick as you see, that I found on the street in Berlin. So I brought them home and I broke all 8 of them to see what shapes. And they all have this nice mountainous shape. And once again, I use this construction angle iron in different ways to offset the glass look. I think they're kind of opposites that complement each other. But the broken glass is not dangerous because I've smoothed all the edges. But I don't know what more to say about it. One tries.
So what about museums and selling art? And selling art and objects? Do you like the idea?
I kind of like the idea for gift shops and museums. They all have gift shops now. And most of the gift shops have a lot of nonsense. And I think they don't mean to have a lot of nonsense. But whether or not they do, they could also show something, sell something that wasn't nonsense, I think. So I like the idea of invading museum gift shops with something of quality that's still affordable to a normal person.
Okay, let's move on with the slides, Jimmie. Here, wow, when, very dramatic, Jimmie. When and where was it?
This was when we lived in Mexico, and this is about 1987, probably.
Mexico.
I look younger, but I'm almost 50 in this photo. I'm not so young in this photo. It's kind of nostalgic to me. Oh, look how young I looked. But this wood is the table I have here in Napoli now.
Yeah.
It was the first piece of furniture we made in Mexico. And we make almost all of our furniture all the time. We always have. But I had this great thick piece of pine, and it has 4 legs that are natural wood. 2 are guava wood. 1 is allspice wood, and the other is from a cinnamon tree. And all of these I found in the trash in Cuernavaca, and they all matched. So I made a table legs out of them.
And do you still have them in Naples?
Have this in Naples. It's still a good table.
Now, do you have near you your sculpture, the one that you are working? More or less, you have been working forever, and maybe.
I always have it next to me, but it is not a sculpture. It is not art, and it is not design, and it is not craft.
Yeah. What is it?
It is glass. It is an old bunch of glass. Where's the best way I can show this? That I found in the garbage in Murano in Venice. And they're all such beautiful shapes, and they went together. I don't know if this is seeable or not, but they went together in such strange ways that I thought, let's see, how is that? Yeah, that's better.
Oh, yes, we can see it. Well, it looks like an animal.
It looks like a cat or a moray eel or an eagle or something. But it's just glued together, glass with wire. And since it is not art and not design, I don't know what to do with it. I don't know how to finish it, but it's been around here for at least 12 years now, probably a little longer. And sooner or later, I'm going to figure out what to do with it.
Well,
how to finish
so
it.
now tell us about the book you're writing.
Oh, every day I write on. And it began to be about my time in the American Indian movement and why there was an American Indian movement, and tried to put that in a more historical context of earlier and 20th century Indian struggles in the Americas, but especially in the US. But then a friend in New York talked to me and said, make it more personal about your life, how you got into the Indian movement and how you started being an artist at the same time. Because the two things are not separated. There's a lot of print about when was I an activist and when did I start being an artist. I've always been an activist, even now, and I've always tried to make art. The two things are like everything in my life. Nothing ever gets separated. I don't see any reason, I don't see any possibility of separating. So the book is about my development, especially moving to Austin, Texas, and then moving from Austin, Texas to Geneva, Switzerland, and then learning about international affairs and going to Pine Ridge and joining the American Indian movement and how we tried to work with the United Nations.
Does it tell us about this experience of working with the United Nations?
I haven't got that far yet. I've left Geneva. I'm now on Pine Ridge, and I've just met a few people that are still special to me, all dead now. And I don't want it to be a memoir, and I don't want it to be what I do want it to be. I want it to be interesting for anyone to read. Only I want to write it the way I try to make my art. I try to make art for the smartest people. And it does not mean that I know who they are. I don't think they're the most educated in a formal sense, necessarily. And I certainly don't think I am one of them. I want to write for people that are smarter than me. I want them to read and like my book and to be interested in the book. So it is very slow writing.
Yeah.
I try to write it well, and that means a kind of honesty of putting words on paper, away from impressions, away from any lies, away from any. So try to be honest on paper. It's not the same as talking honestly. You have to be honest with what words, what sentences. In conversation, you don't have time to do that.
Yeah. So I know that you will have a show at the Madre Museum in Naples in the next future.
I will in a group show in December, and Maria Teresa also is in this show. And it's a show about nature and how we think about nature, how we try to think about nature. And I don't know more about it. I was just invited a few days ago, a week or so ago.
Yeah, do you think that your work will be different, keeping in mind this experience of the coronavirus, or you think that it will be just part of you?
I don't see how it will change, because many things have already happened in life, haven't they?
Yeah.
I don't make work for a market. If I did, I think it would have to change, because I think surely the art market is going to drastically change the rest of this year and next year. But in what ways, we don't know yet. But maybe the idea of bigger and bigger and bigger art will go away.
Mm. You think so?
I think there is a case to be made for a very large painting. And I think the case to be made is Gustave Courbet, the French painter. He is the case. I think he has a painting that's maybe, I don't know how long, 4 meters, something. But great big sculpture, great big things to go in, great big bank lobbies. This is not art. Just like there are so many books that are not literature. Yes, there are books, but they're not what we mean when we say people should read books. We don't mean they should read trash.
Yeah.
When we say art, we should not mean that people should look at trash.
You think so? You think that the market is going to change?
I think it must, because I think even more slowly than we recognize now, but everybody has prophecies, but it's what I think now, that we will go into some sort of time when people don't have so much money that they want to put into such projects.
So as you know, the Biennale in Venice has been postponed 2 years in the same way as the Architecture Biennale will be postponed. So they will be both of them in 2 years' time. Do you think that is a good idea, or would you have done it anyway?
I think I might have done it anyway, realizing that not even half the public might show up, because this could be a good thing, huh?
Probably yes. So you think that art can be a good way to make people feel better in difficult times?
I think it certainly can, in many different ways. The things that we make, the way that art is presented, the way it is bought and sold, the way it is distributed. I would love to see a great revolutionary change in art, because for many years I was teaching here and there, and so many of my students are still friends. And I've known so many extraordinarily good young artists, and they have no market, because they're not good in the way that the art market needs for the money. So then they don't make any money, they stop doing art, And it is a shame because their art is absolutely needed, especially where they might be. They might be in Malmo, Sweden. They might be in Venice. They might be in any place where they don't need another Jeff Koons. The museums don't need another Andy Warhol. But they might need some of the fantastic things that these younger artists would have done if they had a little support. And if museums and galleries and collectors would support art instead of supporting the market of art, this would be a revolutionary change.
Would it be possible?
Let's hope it will be. Yeah.
You know, Jimmie, then the problem would be to select these young artists, because otherwise we go back to the market idea, because the way you select them makes a big difference.
But they might very often be selected only regionally, because we have to think there are now millions of artists. Worldwide, there are millions of artists now.
Yeah.
So they cannot all be in all the museums, and we wouldn't want to go to that museum. But there are people in Glasgow that are very, very good and could do great things for Scotland or for half of Scotland. And they might never be in Venice. They might never be in New York. They might never be in Jakarta. And the guy from Saudi Arabia, Maria Teresa knows him, he never leaves his donkey. When he goes to a museum for a show, he takes his donkey with him. Well, he's not needed in New York. He's needed in Arabia. So it's not that people need to get world famous or any kind of famous. It's that the art system needs to look more at art and artists instead of fame and markets.
So maybe, Jimmie, starting from our conversation, we could ask in Venice, since next year is not going to be a Biennale, but the Giardini are there and they are empty. Maybe we can ask them to organize something with the young artist.
It's a nice idea, yeah.
You know, considering that now everything is different and everything is a challenge, why not?
Why not?
Maybe, voila, maybe I can ask them, why not? You know, it would be so interesting. And you...
I lived a long, long time. I lived 7 years in New York City. And for a while, I was running an artist organization. And I met so many artists. I met so many older artists who were in New York, thinking that was the place to go. And in 30 years, they never had a show anywhere. They never had a gallery anywhere. Many of these people died never having had a show. Some were very good artists. Some were not very good artists, but very good painters. And some were very bad artists. So just the category young artist is suspicious, like the category old artist.
Yeah. So how, the last question, Jimmie, which is probably the most difficult, how would you describe a good artist?
I think there is no criterion at all. But when you see something that is dishonest, we should know it is dishonest. When we see something that is bad, maybe if it is not dishonest, maybe it is bad only in the way I need art to be. I don't think art is in the eye of the beholder, but I think it almost is. It almost is.
Do you think that art has to do with the relationship with the viewer?
It almost does if things were not as they are. And I tell this story to all my students. Not this story, but we have here in Napoli, we have a museum at Capodimonte. And like all big museums, it is full of old paintings. And most of these paintings they have nothing to do with art. They're there because they're paintings, and they're paintings by the Academy, and they're paintings because they're by famous painters, and they have nothing to do with art. They're just paintings. And then you get to a painting, this is the story I always tell. You're at the Prado, you go through kilometers of paintings, and then suddenly at the back, there's a piece by El Greco, and you say, even painting can be art. That's what I used to tell my students.
Okay. I think that you are good at paradoxes. So, my dear friends, I don't know if someone has a question for Jimmie. Here we are, open to questions or to say hello to our friends. Ben, there is something that you would like to add to our conversation?
Yes, Jimmie and Michaela, so wonderful. It must be nearing aperitivo time over in Italy, so we're not going to keep you much longer. Jimmie, I just had a chance to see your wonderful exhibition at the Whitney in 2018 at the Center of the World, which was also at the Hammer in Los Angeles. 120 works, a great exhibition. I don't think you got a chance to see it, right?
I didn't see it because I'm not allowed to cross the ocean.
Ah, a shame. But tell me about it. Your response to it is a very big exhibition.
I would have had more recent works, but Anne Elgood, the curator, wanted the show because she wanted to show works that I had done in the US and in Mexico. And I saw her reasoning, and she did put some new things. I don't remember what. But I don't know if I had been there, it would have been different. But my baby sister went without telling me, and she took my cousin, who I hadn't seen since he was a baby. They're all old people now. And he saw a photo of his father in the show. my uncle was part of the Indians family, part of this thing I did I first did it at the Kinkellaba Gallery, Kinkellaba House in New York.
So
that was nice that my little sister went to see it.
Jimmie, I have a question from Toronto. A friend of mine from Toronto, Rosalind Kismill, and she's asking you, considering that you have so many professions, what is the way you see yourself most? I wonder if it is a truth teller or a truth seer.
I have described myself as a international gardener. I am really a fanatical gardener, and I've never had a real piece of land since I was a child to garden. It's just little pieces. Are here in Napoli, it's 2 terraces. In Berlin, we just have a flower box in front. That's all we have. But any little scrap of land, I want to grow things on. And I have a real, not talent, but a real gift. I was given this opportunity to grow things. And it is the way I think of myself.
You know, Jimmie, that we know and you know that culture is about cultivate.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So, of course, you cultivate. It is part of your life. It is part of your terrace, as I know in Naples. You grow your flowers, and I don't know if you grow vegetables. I don't know that. You can tell us.
I try not to, because the area of Campania has such beautiful vegetables. I like to support them. I like to eat them. But now we grow basilicum, of course, basil, and we have a Brazilian black bean plant that already has 7 bean pods. But normally I don't like to grow vegetables in a small place because I love plants and flowers. If I have a garden, I grew up with my parents having a garden always. Everything, corn, potatoes, beans, every kind of squash.
So, Jimmie, there is another question for you. If what you think about, if you agree or disagree with this putting artists in categories, or the idea of inclusive arts. So, what is your point of view?
That is a good question. Several artists, like Joseph Beuys, say everyone is an artist. But it's kind of a funny thing to say to me. I don't think everyone is a, well, I can't think of what. I think if you're an artist, you're an artist. And I don't really like the category very much. I write poetry. I don't think I'm a poet. I try to make art. I don't think I'm an artist. But at the same time, I don't like it when we say everyone is an artist, because then it makes art as though it is nothing. Oh yeah, you could say music, or you could say poetry, or you could say writing. Everyone is a writer. No, they're not. Everyone is a poet. No, they're not. Everyone is a musician. No, they're not. We are unique humans. To say that we are all of this or we're all of that, every human is a brain surgeon. No, we're not.
Yeah.
We are all unique. Why should we all be something? It kind of demeans art, and it demeans all of us at the same time.
One other question, Jimmie, for you. How did your experience in Mexico affect your views on monumental art?
I first went to Mexico in 1963, a long, long time ago. And I saw this big, weird statue of Tlaloc, the rain god, the water god. And it is so powerful and so big without being so big. It's not so big, but the power is in the small detail, all the little detail. And I didn't live in New York until more than 10 years later. No, 20 years later. 20 years later. In Mexico, I mean. But it stayed with me and stays with me. But there's an idea of bigness to show bigness. And then there's an idea also, monumental art, to show a historical narrative. A silly man on a silly horse. And this obviously is like a bad painting. It has nothing to do with art. It's just a big monumental thing. And because it's made by a sculptor, we say it's art. It has nothing to do with art. It's just a guy on a horse.
So
things that are made just to be big things. I think Richard Serra is kind of childish. Let me put it that way.
So it seems that your idea about big is very clear.
Probably.
Well, so my dear Jimmie, I would say as a closing thing that let's keep working.
Let's keep working. Good idea.
What do you think?
I can figure out how to finish this.
Well, I suppose it will take a little while, but you never know.
But who knows, if I finish it, maybe I'll have no more interest in it. And now I can think every day how to finish it.
So it is a then thing, a then approach. Let's do it every day something. So thank you, Jimmie. It has been really a pleasure, as usual, to talk to you. Thank you, Ben. I don't see you, but I can.
Michaela, don't you worry, I'm here.
Here you are, you appear without kangaroo. Please.
I know, no kangaroo backdrop. I just wanted to thank you and Jimmie. What a wonderful conversation. We had viewers from Norway, Canada, America, Italy today. Everyone enjoying your words. It's obviously you're good friends. And Jimmie, I want to come and visit Naples sometime soon. Let's do a little gardening together. I'm better at the after gardening cocktail than I am at the gardening itself, but I'll, and Michaela, let's go to Venice sometime. I'll visit you there too.
We have to do it, and it is a pleasure to be with you and your wonderful place. I talk about your wonderful, a little eccentric, a little romantic, beautiful place, your club, and I hope I can join you soon in New York.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining us today. You can see a repeat of this program on our YouTube channel, National Arts Club. We've also got lots of upcoming programs, 2, 3, 4, and 5 times a week. So please join us. Jimmie, Michaela, thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing you in person one day soon. Okay, bye-bye.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao, Jimmie.
Ciao, ciao, Nicola.